So we're going to go on to talk about harm caused on our roads in West Mercia. West Mercia is a beautiful three counties in the heart of the country, but also has the most beautiful roads and people sometimes behaviour on them doesn't leads to the very worst happening in terms of being killed or seriously injured. It is the biggest causer of death in West Mercia. And indeed, we want to make sure that changes. Going to touch on some different areas around how in this next term we can see some progress towards the issue, because the central issue is about reducing the number, isn't it, that are killed and seriously injured. The first around technology. We live in a world where technology is part of our lives. Marcus, who's a community speedwatch volunteer in Shrewsbury, says, I feel something needs to be done to slow vehicles. Often during the later evenings and overnight, speeds are regularly in excess of 50 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So how's technology going to play a part in this fight over the next 4 years? Mark's using an example, I don't know where he's referring to, other than it's in Shrewsbury somewhere, but it might be a spot that's unlikely to see a police officer doing some physical enforcement. What else is there available to help that tackling against somebody driving in excess of the posted speed limit?
Well, this is where the community are great in West Mercia, and I'm very grateful for Marcus for being a volunteer in a community speedwatch programme. You know, him working with the police are keeping communities safer. And we, through funding from the OPCC, have been able to invest in some TrueCam cameras. And over the last year, over 1,500 people have been reported through the usage of TrueCam, where we can prosecute people. Neighbourhood teams can prosecute people when they take out that methodology. Obviously, speedwatch campaigns can catch people speeding, and then they come to us and we send letters out to the drivers to offer a level of deterrence. We also have a thing called SNAP that has been embraced in West Mercia, much more than I think in other forces, where citizens can send in imagery that they've caught of road offences, which we will, if we can, prosecute for. So that's also really helpful, and we're bringing a lot of people to justice in that way. We all use the beautiful roads here. I think only in the last week, on Monday, we reflected on everything that's gone over the weekend, some real tragedies. We'd had death on the roads here, you know, the impact that will have on children, families and lives. So it's incumbent that we and the community can do whatever we can to try and get those killed or seriously injured numbers down. And technology and volunteers in this way is one of the ways we can deal with it.
Our community have a diversity of views, of course, and different opinions. Dunk from Stourport in North Worcestershire said, stop obsessing with speed and focus on the quality of driving. Half the people sat at 40 in a 60 can't overtake properly, are spatially inept and are more dangerous. Now, I see, when West Mercia Police are out doing speed enforcement, there's all kinds of things from it must be short for the Christmas party, all the way through to we're just out revenue raising. How do you balance that element? Because it's very clear, isn't it, that shows that speed is one of the causes, inappropriate speed is one of the causes that contributes towards killed and seriously injured. But it's much wider than speed, isn't it, in terms of that wider skills that road users need to maintain. Over this next 4 years, how do you make sure, because speed will always be an element of it, but how do you make sure all the other bits around enforcement we need to focus on? Rich, I know you've seen some of this from some of your past roles. How do you think this will change over the next 4 years?
I think it's worth briefly revisiting why we take action on the roads. So far more people, I would expect, will transgress in terms of road safety legislation than they will in terms of some of the things we've been discussing already, such as theft and criminal damage. But the harm that can be caused by those transgressions is enormous. So Alex and I, during our careers, have responded to some awful tragedies. We've delivered news to people who had no idea we were there regarding the loss of a loved one, and speed and distraction contribute to those. So that's why we do it, and viewers will have different opinions on the legitimacy of that. I'd suggest that in the next 4 years we will focus more on responding in a really targeted and intelligent way. So identifying through analysis the locations where serious collisions happen most frequently, which is something we do at the moment, then looking to install cameras or diversionary activity in those places, using technology as it develops to identify other forms of dangerous behaviour, such as the use of mobile phones whilst driving. And increasingly, there are some AI trials that are proving quite effective in that regard. So I would expect us always to focus on speed, because it escalates the harm that can be caused by a collision, but also to focus on other forms of driver behaviour. And one of those things will be trying to ensure that we respond effectively when someone is on the road behaving dangerously, and it may be harder for us to find out who they are. So it's very straightforward. If let's say a law-abiding member of the public who has their car registered to them, who has insurance in their name, commits a speeding offence, for them to receive a ticket through the post. And on occasions that will be appropriate. But similarly, we may identify a vehicle that doesn't have a current registered keeper, that doesn't have current insurance, who is speeding. And so one of the things that we're very keen to ensure is that we develop a proper follow-up in those circumstances, perhaps using some of the technology available to us through really tenacious intelligence work, that those people don't get off scot-free. Because I would suggest that if they are not insuring their vehicle, if they're not registering their vehicle, if they're speeding, that they are more likely to cause harm on our roads than some of those people who have complied with the law but perhaps transgressed in terms of speed.
So the whole using that as the in to tackle the criminality and denying criminals use of the road network. I know we talk in around the 3 E's: enforcement, education, and engineering. Enforcement got a place, been around for a very, very long time. Over the next 4 years, where would you like to see some progress around the other E's, the education and the engineering side?
So if I can come back to Dunk, I'd love him to meet some of my OPU officers who deal with death every day and talk to them about speeding. We call it the fatal four. So speeding, drugs and alcohol, seatbelts, and distraction, i.e. mobile phones. They're the killers on the road. That's why we concentrate on speeding. And a lot of that then is in the space of education that you've described. I often think about, has anyone driven in a bus lane? A lot of people will probably say yes. Have you driven in a bus lane without a seatbelt on? Probably not. Have you driven in a bus lane without a seatbelt on whilst on the phone? This is playing to Richard's point. You go from, like, the majority of people may have made a mistake, but when you aggregate them all up, you're beginning to look more like a criminal, and we need to intervene from a criminal point of view. But if you've got someone without a seatbelt on, speeding a little bit, there's actually a huge role to play in education. You've commissioned lots of services in this area. And often, whether you're on a motorbike or you're in a car, if you're caught speeding or if you're caught with a vehicle defect that we need to fix, we can divert you to a scheme which is more teachable rather than punishable. And so you don't get points on your license, but you do have to pay for the scheme, and the scheme pays for itself, therefore. Many police officers have been on speed awareness courses, and they're actually really good. You go in cynical, you come out, if you've been in one, and think, okay, that was very useful. And similarly, there's a thing called NRAC, which is if you're stopped on a motorbike, for example, we can refer you into a government scheme. It's run by the same organisation, which helps you assess risk better as a motorcyclist. And then I know there's other services to help people with alcohol addiction and driving. So really important that us working with partners. And then from your point around engineering, with the local authorities around how you design out the illegal use on the roads.
Claire, one of the areas that we've been talking about is around the opportunity for change. Alex just talked about a speed awareness course. If you, as an alternative to points, if you're eligible in terms of the speeding, some of the other opportunities in terms of might not exist yet. If you might get a ticket for or get reported for an illegal number plate on your motorbike. Whereas actually the intervention might be about needing to also A, they need to fix their number plate, but B, also uplift their skills. Over the next 4 years, what do you think is possible in terms of improving the offer to those communities whose behaviour perhaps isn't quite right at the moment, but needs that intervention to maybe adjust? Where are the areas do you think we can get some focus?
Yeah, so I think if I just talk briefly around our recent road safety grant round, £280,000 earlier on this year was offered out to local communities to bid for initiatives around road safety. Some of the ones that we funded in there are some road safety education initiatives in there, which look at driver and passenger education programs around car seat safety, as well as Pathfinder. I think what I touched upon earlier around our needs assessments. We've also had a road safety needs assessment highlighting some of the issues. Some of the areas, so in answer to your question, for us, it's about continuously reviewing what our needs are, what are the profiles of the road offenders, are they motorbikes, are they cars, what charges are being brought, is it mobile phones, is it drugs, is it drinking? And I think it's really important for us to keep on top of that need and continuously review the services that we do commission. And some of the things that have been highlighted so far are around older drivers, for example. So our needs assessment has highlighted gaps in the kind of education programs which target older drivers. So that's something that we might look to do in the future. We've also had a recent report from West Mercia Police around motorcyclists. So we're reviewing that at the moment and working with partners to understand whether there is a need for commissioning services, specifically in relation to motorcyclists as well.
Really interesting, because I'm as commissioner, you won't be surprised to hear I am absolutely supportive around enforcement. Enforcement has a real role, but also that opportunity to also tap into somebody when they are willing to change their behaviour, how they're supported to do that. And I think that'll be really interested over this term as to how we give people more opportunities for people to change their behaviours.